Hello and welcome. It's my great pleasure to welcome Associate Professor Dinesh Somanah. He's Associate Professor of Physics at the University of Mauritius. In addition to his international projects and his research, he's also a very keen football enthusiast. Dinesh, can you tell us about your career to date and how does one become an astrophysicist?
I was studying in Royal College of QPIP. Then I went to India to do my BSc in physics. I studied in Loyola College in Madras. Then I did my MSc physics, specialized in theoretical physics at the University of Madras. Then I came back to Mauritius and I started working in St. Joseph College for 2 years. And then I joined the university. Since the last 20 years I've been teaching at the university and did my PhD jointly at the University of Mauritius and the Raman Research Institute in Bangalore.
And what was your PhD about?
The title of my PhD was a low-frequency radio survey of the southern sky at 150 megahertz. So it was about developing new techniques, new algorithms to produce a software which can convert the data of a radio telescope into radio images and study the images in an astrophysical point of view.
That sounds very complicated and very technical. So you need to relax by playing football for the University of Mauritius.
Yeah, playing football is very complementary to my professional work.
Why is that? Because you can calculate the passes
no,
between
it's
players?
because during my research it's using more of intellect and the mind, and playing football is developing the physical body. So it's complementary to what I do in my profession.
So if somebody is listening to us and wants to become an astrophysicist, what advice would you give this person?
I would strongly advise that person to first do a degree in physics, a BSc in physics, and then he can decide on which field of astronomy he wants to specialize in his master's or PhD.
Are there many students at the University of Mauritius who are doing a PhD in astrophysics?
Unfortunately, so far we have had only 2 students. One student just completed his PhD in astrophysics. He's doing his postdoc in Johannesburg in South Africa. And there's one more student who will be completing his PhD maybe at the end of this year.
And those students, have they found employment? Is it very difficult for an astrophysicist to find employment in Mauritius? Because there are very few of them, as I understand.
It might be difficult for an astrophysicist to find employment in Mauritius. But on the international scene, an astrophysicist can find a job more easily, because while being trained to do a PhD in astrophysics, he's also trained in computing, in image processing, which have a lot of scope in industries also.
So physicists are very adaptable. What you're saying is that you can do a degree in physics and then go and work in another field altogether.
I think so. According to me, when one is studying physics, it's a training of the mind to think in a very logical, analytical, and objective way. And it is that training of the mind which allows anyone who has a first degree in physics to pursue his studies or research in any field after.
For example, what sort of field would somebody go into?
I can give you an example from the University of Oxford, where half of the graduates in physics, they do finance after. And it seems they perform in their job much better than those who have got a first degree in finance. I have a student at the University of Mauritius who completed his degree 5 years back, and today is a financial manager in a very big bank.
So what's the link between physics and finance? Because there doesn't seem to be that kind of clear-cut link.
I think if one wants to do finance at a high level, one should be very good in mathematics and computing. So a physicist has a very good background in mathematics and computing. And on top of that, I suppose if one wants to do well in finance, one needs a very rational and logical mind. And that's a kind of training which one undergoes while studying physics.
How many people are studying physics at undergraduate level at the University of Mauritius?
Usually we have an intake of between 40 to 50 students, and in the second year some 30 to 40 are left, and on the average there are around 30 students who pass out with a BSc in physics each year.
And are these girls as well as boys, or?
Since I've joined university, I've noticed that the proportion of boys and girls have been 50-50.
Interesting,
Yeah.
because we always think of women as being less inclined to take physics for some reason.
I would even say in most cases, the student who came first has been a girl in physics. Yeah.
Interesting,
Yeah.
interesting. And do you encourage girls in schools? Do you go to schools and talk to them?
I do give talks in a few secondary schools, and during my talks I do encourage the students to study physics.
Very good. I know there's a decline in students taking physics in Ireland, in Europe, in Australia even. So why is this interest maintained in Mauritius?
I know the problem in UK since I visited UK 2 years back. It seems many students who've done their degree in physics, they change field after. So there's a scarcity of good physics teachers in secondary schools in UK. And it seems there are some schools where biology graduates are teaching physics. Whereas in Mauritius, most students who complete their BSc physics go to teach in secondary schools. And right now, most teachers in secondary schools are my ex-students who have done their BSc physics with me.
So they've been well taught.
I suppose so.
Now tell us about the skies in Mauritius, because many people, as I understand it, are very interested in planets in the sky above, and they go to hotels where there are telescopes, or there's even an astronomy society in Saint-Esprit College.
The specificity of Mauritius in observing the sky is that the galactic center is nearly overhead in Mauritius. So our view of the galactic center and the Milky Way is much better than in the northern hemisphere. That's why you have many amateur astronomers, even professional astronomers, who come to the southern hemisphere to observe the sky. And most planets are visible throughout the year, and we got a beautiful view of the sky. Light pollution is much less than compared to cities in Europe or US or big cities in India. So Mauritius is a beautiful sky. And in Mauritius we have an association called Amateur Astronomy Association, which was founded by Father Mansfield quite a long time back. And if I remember right, he was teaching at Saint-Esprit College. So there are a good group of amateur astronomers in Mauritius who observe the sky regularly, and in most cases they meet at Saint-Esprit College.
Are you a member of this association?
Unfortunately, I'm not a member, but most of the persons who are in the association are well known to me. I interact with them regularly, and we're also very good friends.
Is there such an association at the University of Mauritius?
We don't have such an association, but we do have our physics students who have some kind of temporary association where they do meet once or twice per year to observe the sky.
So if tonight I decide to go and watch the skies, look at the skies through a telescope, what are the planets I'm likely to see?
So the advantage of Mauritius is you'll see most of the planets. But if you want to observe the sky, you should choose a night when it's far from full moon. Because when you have full moon, plus or minus 2 days, the contrast between the moon and the objects will not be very good, and you will not see those objects very well. Like right now, it's not a proper night to go and observe the sky. I would advise you to go maybe after 1 week.
And when it's full moon, why can't you see the planets as clearly? What is the explanation for that?
It's because of the contrast. Suppose you're looking at a very bright object which is, let's say, emitting 10 joules of energy, another object which is emitting, let's say, 1 joule of energy. So the brighter object will dominate the other one, and you will not see the other one. So it's basically the difference in amount of energy or power emitted by the two objects.
One of the favorite constellations in Australia and Mauritius is the Seven Cross.
Yeah.
What is the Seven Cross? How do you explain this name?
Okay, the names given to constellations are due to the imaginations of human beings. So when the name was created, was used, you have 4 stars who look to be found at the tips of a cross. So that's the origin of the name. And the Southern Cross is even found on the Australian flag.
It is.
It's quite symbolical.
And can we see it very clearly in Mauritius?
We can see it very clearly in Mauritius, but if you want to know what time you can see it, we have well-known softwares in astronomy. You can put in your date, the year which you are, and the time you are, to know in which direction the sky you should look at.
Very good. And are there many people at the university who watch the transit of Venus in 2004?
Most people in the university and most students did watch the transit of Venus in 2004.
Why was this such an important moment in the life of astronomy?
There are certain events in the sky which we call rare astronomical events. That is, they occur once in more than 100 years. So the transit of Venus is a transit which occurs rarely. And the one before 2004 was observed in 1874. 1874 and 1882. And the next one will be observed in Mauritius in 2117. There will be a transit of Venus in 2012, but it won't be visible in Mauritius. So because it's such a rare event and spectacular event, that's why there was, I suppose, a big drive towards the transit of Venus.
And you and your colleagues helped students watch the transit of Venus by building a telescope, I believe.
My colleagues in the Department of Physics and myself, we taught the students and even our ex-students who are teaching in secondary schools how to build an optical telescope using less than 200 rupees. And we use such telescopes to observe the transit of Venus using a technique called the projection method. And it was quite successful, and we are quite happy that we have been able to make nearly all staff at the university and students to be able to witness such a rare event.
A gentleman called Pingré went to Rodrigue to watch the transit of Venus some way back. Was he successful? Did he leave observations behind?
Yeah, Abbé Pingré went to Rodrigue in June 1761. He made a very good attempt to observe the transit of Venus, but I should say it was partly successful. It was not fully successful.
Why is that?
He had some technical problems and other problems which I'm not very sure. But what I know scientifically, it has not been well noted in research papers that he made a successful observation.
If we move on to your own research, you're a very keen researcher. You give papers at international conferences and you publish a lot of papers. Can you tell us about your major projects at this stage?
I started my career in physics as a theoretical physicist. That was nearly 20 years back. I was studying at the University of Madras. And at that time, most of my friends, Indian friends, went to do their PhD in US when I decided to come back to Mauritius for different reasons. And during the same time, the government of Mauritius and government of India started to build a radio telescope. So I have been closely associated with the design, the building, the construction of the telescope, the mechanical part, the hardware, and developing the software. So I would consider myself to be a radio astronomer.
And where is this radio telescope located?
So it's called the Mauritius Radio Telescope. It's found in the forest of Bradu, which is very close to Roche Noire or Poste Lafayette in the northeast of Mauritius.
And it's very protected from people, or can anyone go and look at the skies?
Unfortunately, as far as thefts are concerned, it's not well protected, but it is open to the public. We have welcomed kindergarten kids to all age people at different times of the year during the last 20 years.
And how different is it to other telescopes around the world? What makes it so special?
First, it is a radio telescope. A radio telescope is a telescope which observes radio waves coming from the entire universe. And radio waves are invisible to our eyes. Sometimes I call it observing the invisible universe. So a radio telescope is very different from optical telescopes. So we chose to build a radio telescope in Mauritius because the sky observed in the southern hemisphere, that is the southern sky, has not been well observed. The only country where you have major radio telescopes in the southern hemisphere is Australia. And they have been observing at frequencies at 408 megahertz and above. So there was some kind of lacuna at lower frequencies. So we decided to build a radio telescope which works at 150 megahertz in Mauritius to ultimately make a radio map of the southern sky at 150 megahertz. And that's what makes it unique, because never before we have had a radio map of the southern sky at 150 megahertz.
But you go there very often. You have to be there mainly at night in order to observe and map and so on. How often do you go to Brado for that purpose?
So between 1990 and 2000, Brado was like my first house, and my own house was like my second house. And between 95 and 2000, I've been sleeping 3 or 4 hours per day, and that's the time where we have been doing most of our observations.
Yes.
So I can say that I spent most of my life at my research career at Brado. But fortunately now, I don't need to go as often because the data is available on CDs, so I can analyze the data in my office at the university. But I do go there once per year.
I believe that you have discovered a planet, and that the planet is called Planet Somanah.
I should make a correction here. I did not discover the planet. The planet was discovered in 1996 by 2 Italian astronomers. I suppose because of my research papers in conferences and the quality of my research papers, the International Astronomical Union and the NASA decided to reward me by choosing my name to a minor planet which is found in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter.
You must be the only Mauritian after whom a planet has been named.
As far as I know.
Not even the Prime Minister has a planet named after him. And therefore it is a great, great honor in terms of science that we have somebody after whose name the planet.
I should say it's a great honor to the whole MRT group, the scientists, the Mauritian scientists and Indian scientists who have been working for the radio telescope.
Very good. And do you look at that planet very often? Do you watch it?
Unfortunately, it's not a planet which we can see with our visible eyes. You need very sophisticated telescopes like Hubble or telescopes found in Chile and Hawaii to be able to observe it.
I believe, Dinesh, that you are involved in an international project which is called SKA. Can you tell us about this a little bit?
SKA stands for the Square Kilometer Array. There's an international consortium which comprises of all astrophysicists in the whole world, where we want to build the biggest radio telescope and the most powerful telescope in the world. So there was an international bid where initially there were 5 countries. So finally only 2 countries are left, South Africa and Australia. So the point right now is South Africa and Australia, they are building prototypes which we call pathfinders. They are telescopes which won't be as powerful as the SKA, to try to convince the international committee to win the bid. And right now I'm supporting South Africa as a scientist and politically also. And if South Africa wins the bid, there'll be hundreds of dishes which will be built in South Africa and placed in a South African desert. And in nearly all SADC countries, Namibia, Mozambique, Madagascar and Mauritius, there will be a few dishes. And all those dishes will be physically connected by optical fiber. And the great thing about this telescope, it will bring in the state-of-the-art technology in communication, in mechanical engineering, in computing in this part of the world. And we'll also have a supercomputer which will be used to analyze the data from this telescope.
Is the Mauritian government providing any funds for this project?
Recently, the professor in charge of the SKA project in South Africa came to Mauritius, and the government of Mauritius gave a very positive feedback. But the final decision has not been taken, but I'm sure a very positive decision will be taken very soon.
And do we have a computer which is powerful enough to join in this kind of project?
We don't need to have a computer. If South Africa wins a bid, the international consortium will make a supercomputer available in this part of the world where Mauritian scientists and engineers will be able to use the supercomputer.
And when are you likely to get an answer about who's won the bid?
Within the next 2 years.
So it could be for the World Cup in 2010.
It could be. It could coincide with the World Cup in South Africa.
And you'll be able to indulge your other passion, which is football.
Yeah, because one of my aims is to go to the World Cup in South Africa. So maybe if I go for a conference in South Africa in the SK project, I'll take the opportunity to watch a few matches and hopefully the final of the World Cup.
Oh, it's very interesting. Now, if we come back to your own research, do you travel a lot to conferences? Do you go to Europe and India and other countries?
I travel a lot, but I could have traveled much more because of my teaching commitments at the university, I'm not able to attend as many conferences as I would have wished. I have given conferences in University of Oxford, in India, in different institutes, in the University of Sydney, and in many research institutes in South Africa.
And those papers are on your own research and therefore arises out of your PhD and your projects?
A few papers arise from my PhD. Some of them are in the pipeline right now, and most of them are papers arising from my research projects.
And how is research at the University of Mauritius? Is it facilitated? Is it very difficult to attend conferences? Is there funding available for this kind of thing?
There is some amount of funding available, but it's not sufficient. But my philosophy is the way I look at research. If one wants to do research, one should have some kind of group where you need a critical mass, where you have a few professors, junior professors, students doing their postdoc and PhD. It should be at least 10 to 15 people. And you need the time for it. And you need to have access very easily to all research papers. You need to be able to interact with other groups doing similar research. I would say that financially, the University of Mauritius cannot afford all that right now.
So does it have to select areas where research is going to be done, or is it going to support everybody with small amounts of money?
I would expect the university to support areas where more relevant research for our country has to be done.
And what are those areas according to you?
According to me, I won't specify any specific area, but I would say areas which will alleviate or solve problems of national level.
Social sciences, possibly science, technology, management.
Yeah.
Most of the areas
but I also add that in most universities we have that issue of how much money should be given to applied research and fundamental research. History has shown us if any university concentrates only on applied research, it will not last for long. For me, it's according to my philosophy, that's my point of view, one needs some kind of equilibrium, some balance between fundamental research and applied research.
Now, by chance, this year is the year of astronomy.
Yeah.
According to the United Nations, 2009 is the year astronomy. Can you tell us a little bit about this calendar which you have prepared with your colleagues?
This year it's exactly 400 years since Galileo pointed his optical telescope towards the sky. And the United Nations has decided to name 2009 as the International Year of Astronomy because it's exactly 400 years that Galileo pointed his telescope towards the sky. So it was, as we would say in French, it was a déclic in our knowledge of the universe. Suddenly, instead of seeing only 10 stars in the sky in a given region, we could see hundreds of stars. And at the University of Mauritius, we have the Mauritius Radio Telescope Group, which includes two colleagues of mine, Dr. Nalini Saw, Dr. Girish Bihari, and myself. So we have come up with a program of activities, talks, exhibitions, night observation at the Mauritius Radio Telescope. And recently, one of my colleagues, Dr. Nalini Saw, who was the main person responsible, together with myself and other colleagues and students, we came up with a calendar of astronomy.
And every night, every month, there's a picture of the sky that you can see from Mauritius.
The interesting part of the calendar is for each month, for each day we have the different phases of the moon. And for each month we give what one would see in the sky at 11 p.m. and how can you know what you would see at different hours in the sky on the same months.
It's a fascinating calendar. I recommend that people obtain it. Where can we get it?
They can contact my colleague Dr. Nalini Saw at the university, or myself. Will be happy to help them.
Can you buy it in the shops?
Right now we have not made such arrangements, but we intend to do so in the future.
I think it's very important that each school should get a copy of the calendar.
One arrangement which we have done is that each school and college will get a calendar.
And they will be able to develop the science of astronomy in schools.
That's the aim. We hope that at least a few teachers in the school, whether it's primary or secondary, will make a follow-up to try to inculcate the love of observing the sky, the love for astronomy in schools.
And where do you see astronomy going in Mauritius? Is it going to take off? Is it going to be as popular as it is now, or more popular?
As far as I'm, according to my philosophy, astronomy will always be a popular science. Because astronomy is about asking oneself questions about our origin, the origin of the universe, the origin of life in the universe. Whether we want it or not, whether we get funding or not, according to me, astronomy will always be a popular science.
And who are the great astronomers you have a special interest in?
There have been many astronomers, but the main astronomer who has really impressed me is Subramaniam Chandrasekhar. So he is Indian born, but American citizen. So he got the Nobel Prize in physics. He did a lot of innovative research in the study of formation and evolution of stars, which according to me is remarkable.
Thank you very much, Dinesh, for sharing all these ideas and expressing your passion for astronomy. I hope that many, many young people have listened to you and that they share your passion for the skies. I myself shall take a very good look at the sky tonight, but not through a telescope, I'm afraid.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Serge.